Okay, so where we last left off was with our table of data. We can see that actually, even though I said no header row, this has kind of morphed this into a weird. It's duplicated the first row, the Belgium row, and made it into a header. So I'm going to, of course, edit this to call it country name. And again, just as we would with anything else, we don't want to. We don't want to have spaces, weird characters, etc. in our column names. It's always handier to have them as sort of single words essentially, or separated by underscores. I think underscores are slightly less problematic than hyphens, but you'll experiment. Just know that you obviously want to get in the habit of not using spaces and strange characters. So, and this is going to be unemployment rate. Now, realistically, of course, we would need to do more research before using this data because we don't really know what version of unemployment this is measuring. This is to say unemployment rate is really too generic. We would want to dig into this a little bit more. But I want to point out that one of the options that we have here is we can generate a map. In fact, it's going to generate a map for us kind of automatically. And what it's doing right now is it's geocoding. It's geocoding these country names, and it's going to spit something out at us, and we'll see what that is. You can see here that it's saying what's the ambiguity of this, right? Because we know that, for example, there are multiple cities called Washington, for example. So sometimes there is some ambiguity, and you may have to provide some correction or additional details for these. Now, this is interesting, right? Because I have ended up with, in fact, yes, it is mapping the Netherlands to a place that is in the Netherlands, but what do we notice about this, right? This is just giving us points. It looks to me from this, because these don't seem to be placed at the capitals, right? Stockholm is the capital of Sweden, Oslo is the capital of Norway. It looks like what it's done is it's measured the so-called geographic center of these countries, I assume according to some accepted standard, which I don't know. Right, but we can see they kind of appear in the middle. This isn't really what we want, right? What we want is we want that thing where we have outlines of the countries, and then we can see the colors of, what their unemployment rate is. So in order to get that, we're going to need some KML. Again, that keyhole markup language will describe the boundaries of, which can describe the boundaries of geographic areas. Now, the most straightforward way to find it is to look for something in the KML format. So I'm going to say world country boundaries KML, and I can see a couple of things come up. So I'm going to just try this first one, which seems to actually already be a Google Fusion table, which is kind of handy. It means that should be in theory straightforward for me to make use of. And assuming that it comes up. Okay. Oh, so this is interesting. So this one actually has. It actually has this very overrun column names, but you can see it says ISO 2 digits. So that's actually this actually looks like the identification format that we saw in our TSP data set. So this is good to know about. We might want to actually use that data set for it in the future, and it also has a name column. So this seems pretty valuable, actually. And we can see that when it first comes up, when you're very far away, it renders things as dots. As you get closer, it'll start to fill them in as polygons, right, as geometries. Now, the question, is this the one we want to use? I mean, it seems fine to me. There's probably others out there. I will point out that this thing that came up, this Global Administrative Areas, Boundaries Without Limits, this is actually a really valuable resource I discovered about a year ago, and it's actually great. I'm not even sure who makes it, but you can download the data by country for the entire world, and it comes in a lot of different formats, but it has, for example, I mean, if we look at something like, well, let's look at Italy. That was one that I looked at before. It has different levels of administrative areas. So, for example, if we look at Italy, and I can choose from here Google Earth, KMZ, so KMZ is the zipped file of KML. And in fact, all you need to do, if you get a KMZ file format and you download it to your hard drive, if you have Google Earth, it will automatically open in Google Earth, which is not always what you want. If you want to just open it as a markup file, the way that you would open, say in Aptana or even TextEdit, you can just change that extension to .zip to a zip file, and then it will uncompress appropriately. But I just want to point out that these sort of these levels. So this is just downloading these two. I think it used to visualize these for you. Let's see if it shows us the shapefile or if it just downloads it. So it used to kind of show. I might be in the wrong. Version here. Let's see what we get here. It used to actually kind of show you what you were getting, but the 0, 1, 2, etc. That is kind of a description of. In fact, I guess this is maybe a showing you all of the detail that it has. That's going to give you things like regions and counties. So in Italy, for example, level 0 is typically going to be, or in any country, level 0 is typically going to be the national border. Level 1 might be higher level administrative regions. In the US, our level 1 areas would probably be states. Our level 2 states might be something like counties. So you can use this as a way to find lots of different things. Oh, this is interesting. Wait a second. SimonRogers.net. Simon Rogers, our friend from The Guardian, right? Here you go. 16 Google Fusion border files for you to use. So there you are. No longer at The Guardian, but still helping us out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go with this World Country Boundaries KML. And now this is a public. This is a public table, but I want to get it on my account, right? If I want to actually create a map from this, I'm going to need to create a copy of this in my own Google account. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and download this table. So I'll save it again in my same thing. And I'm not even going to worry about opening it up and previewing it. I'm just going to go straight, oops, that's not where I want to go. I'm just going to go straight back to Drive and create and just upload that table, right? So again, I'm going to browse this. I'm just going to pull that one just as it is. And again, this is really just because I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to accidentally corrupt it in some way without being aware of it. So this is probably a relatively large file. The size of a file like this is going to be partly determined by how much detail there is in the polygons, right, in the actual outlines. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I'm going to say I will attribute it to world country. So I'm going to attribute it right to here. And actually, it's interesting to see what the attribution is on this table. It doesn't appear to have any attribution, so that might give us pause, but we'll start here. My guess is this one has been around for a while. Google does sometimes upload data sets like this and make them available if they're interested in having you use them. Okay. Oh, what's nice is this actually looks a little bit cleaner, doesn't it? So we can tell that the KML is in here by this bit, right? We don't actually see the KML itself, but we see this marker that says KML. We can look into this part of this column, and it's going to show us how the KML is actually described. But again, we probably don't want to mess with that because that, is what's making the polygons work. And now the question is, how do we get our data? I always like to ask, what is this? Is that a map of? Oh, that's not what I want a map of. I want a map of. So here we go. We can see in the rows that it has. We actually have two. We have something called geometry. Okay. We also have something called name. And the question is, which of these is the outline? This one looks a little bit more like an outline. And see, it's a little hard to tell which one is which. So having looked at this, we've seen a map of geometry. And that map of geometry actually, oh, wait, there we go. Interesting. Map of geometry is a little jaggy. I'm going to go ahead and see what happens if I make a map of, quote, name. So I'm going to choose, wait, which one am I going to choose? Name, name. This is not a very well organized file, I hate to say. So I'm going to choose this one instead and see if that gets me something a little bit better. So if I look at here, I'd be curious to know on the map. This one looks like, oh, this says it's geometry. This one seems a lot nicer than what I got. Yeah. We may have to look for an alternate source here. Well, let's see if we have another options here. World, country, outlines, KML. All right, well, I'm going to look for, all right, let's go ahead and move ahead with this just so we can see the process here, and then we'll worry about it. So what I want to do is I'm going to open up my tables. I'm going to open up my data set, which is this Eurostat unemployment. And what I want to do is I want to merge it. I want to merge it with my outlines data set. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I have my data here. I want to merge it with the world country boundaries. And I can see that I have country name here, and of course I have name here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm saying, match these things up on the basis of these columns. Now note that the columns don't have to have the same actual name. They just have to have something that matches. And when I hit next, and it's going to ask me what all do you want, I'm going to leave everything in there right now because I'm not sure exactly which pieces I want to use. But when I choose merge, what it's going to do is create a new table with these things matched up on the basis of their names. The result is that I'm only going to get a table that has for the countries in my original data set, right? So you can see that in my original data set I have 34 rows. In my merged data set, I also only have 34 rows, even though I have 236 in my outlines table. So the question is, what happens when I look at this map? Hopefully something interesting. Okay, so we can see that it's only a handful of the countries that are showing up here. But this is, okay, this is much better, right? We're seeing actual outlines. I'm not sure what was going on with that other view. Now, the question is, how do I want these colors to be organized? Now, we'll talk about the editorial version of this in class, but the thing that I want to illustrate here is how I can actually change the way this looks. So what we're looking at is, we typically look at fill color on polygons. When I first come here, it's going to be just using one color. I'm probably going to want to use something like buckets and transfer it into maybe 4 or 5 buckets. I'm going to say that -1 to 0, to 0 is going to be one color. I'm probably going to make this a gray because that's my no data color. And so Google has this awful default where it wants things to be different colors, right? But as we know, colors are appropriate for categories. And let's see how we go. I'm not actually sure why this is going up to 100 because I'm pretty sure there's no 100 here. Let's use this range. And anyhow, if I were to do this, I would say up to, like, let's say 5 to 12. You know, I'm obviously just making these numbers up, but and then 12 point. Oh boy, 12.01 up to 27.4. Okay, so this is slightly a disaster editorially, but I just want you guys to see this and then we'll move on. Okay, so now we can see a little bit how we get a choropleth map. So when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the various options that we can use to manipulate this. Obviously, these are not the colors that you would use nor how you would choose them, but this will give you a good head start on sort of how to actually customize these colors. All right, see you back here in a minute.